That's number one. Hi everyone. There's a few people looking for seats. So if you can wave if you've got a seat empty next to you, please. Any empty seats? Come forward. There's plenty of seats. There's 2 at the front, 3 at the front. Let's get everyone seated. Any more? There's 2 here, some here. That's great, thank you. Okay. Well, let's stop talking now because we have a fantastic panel for you to listen to. So, get yourself seated comfortably. Nice straight back, shoulders down. Try breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. 4 counts in and 1 out. And when you've all done that, I'll introduce the panel to you, all right? Okay, start now. So, here we have your panel, people, to today. So it's challenging. We're talking about a big reset. We're thinking that maybe this is an absolute pivotal moment for all of us in education. Any rainbows who think that's true? Anyone agree with me? Yeah, thank you, Gilla, thank you. Okay, I believe it's true. Not all of our panel do, but they're going to tell you from real practical experience, right in the middle of everything that's going on, they're going to talk to you about whether this really is a big reset. So we have Brent Anders. He's Director of Institutional Research and Analysis. Don't forget the analysis bit. The Center for Teaching and Learning at the American University of Armenia. So we're really looking forward to that. Thank you, Brent. Margaret Korosek, Dean of Online and Digital Education. Great title, Margaret. University of Leeds in the UK. And another UK person, but she is working in Scotland, Sian Bain, Professor of Digital Education. So they're going to throw out some ideas. They're each going to talk in turn, and there will be time for your questions. Please note any questions for an individual, and then we will attempt to do a panel questions too at the end. So is everyone ready for that? Is everyone ready for that? Yay! Okay. Over to you, Brent. Thank you so much.
Okay. To begin with, thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very happy to be here all the way from Armenia. I'm American, of course. You can tell that from my non-accent, right? Now, the thing is that I've been into AI and understanding that this is going to really affect education. This is going to be something that's really going to impact education, and I saw this about 2 years ago. I was in the field of education as far as trying to get instructors to enhance their capabilities, part of which is with technology. So I started to see the signs of this coming. And then as I did more research, I found out that there's lots of students already using AI even before ChatGPT came out. So it was already there, it was already an issue that instructors needed to deal with, but they didn't want to listen. They didn't want to listen, and then ChatGPT came out. Oh my goodness. So many people were unprepared. So because of that, I frantically did as much research as I could, and I've actually written 2 books about this. So I had no holiday break because I was focused on this to try and help the instructors prepare. So a lot of this information comes from this because what I've tried to figure out is that this is the key aspect, in my opinion, is this AI literacy imperative. So many people are unaware of it and they don't really see its overall importance. I realize that I'm preaching to the choir here with most of you, but I think there's a lot more that a lot of us still don't understand about this, as well as the importance of it, which I hope to convince you of within my presentation. So what is AI literacy specifically? Well, in researching my book, there's lots of explanations, lots of different ways to view it, but I've tried to put that information all together within 4 specific different aspects here. You have awareness, capability, knowledge, and critical thinking. So let's break that down even more. This awareness. We have to be aware that AI is all around us. It truly is in so many different aspects of our lives. So what, right? Well, the thing is that this is affecting our society. Now, this is going to affect our society in many, many different ways, and some of it will be good, and some of it will be bad. But at the very least, we need to be aware of this. We need to have an understanding that this is happening so that we can make these decisions as to how we want to address it. So how is it really affecting society? So most of us know, okay, yeah, search engines, they use AI. Yeah, I've heard about some integration with Microsoft Office, and guess what? It's already integrated with Google Docs. The integration is going to grow more and more. With every single app that you can think of, there's going to be an AI component. How about some other ones that we might not be thinking of? How about gaming? Guess what? It's already being fully integrated with most games. Now, for many of us here, again, around my age, a little bit older, when we hear the word gaming, we think, oh, yeah, entertainment, right? It's fun, let me play a game. Well, guess what? When they did research on current college students right now, they asked them, why do you play games? You would think that most of them would say, well, for entertainment, to reduce stress. No, the number one answer was to make connections. They do it for socialization. So this is becoming the new primary way of socialization. And just look at the overall value of this, $150 billion. That's what this industry is, and it's continuing to grow. The next one here, HireVue. So HireVue is an AI system that is used in the hiring process. Right now, currently, all large businesses, 88% use AI in some way. Most of that is just scanning a resume to make sure it aligns properly with what they're actually looking for. But right now, there's 10% of large businesses in the United States use HireVue for the hiring process. That means that they'll do an AI video interview and then make a decision. So no human even goes through that process. No human is part of the decision to hire this person. No, the AI does it completely. That's 10% of large businesses in the United States right now. It's making that decision. Here's a really interesting one, dating apps. Dating apps. 20 to 33% of all marriages in the United States are a result from a dating app, an online dating app. Yeah. And these dating apps, guess what? It's spreading across the world. That's just the way society is running now. A majority of these are now using AI to make these decisions as to who we're going to pair up. So now AI is making the decisions as to who's going to be together, where are the children coming from. Interesting, right? AI literacy, something to be aware of. Social media. Many of us know, and many of us are part of that, right? We use social media a lot. Okay? But the big thing is that, again, a survey from the United States, 70% use social media to get their news from. And a majority of that 70%, that's their only source of news, is from social media. And then finally, more and more governments are starting to use AI as part of their decision-making process. Yes, United States, Japan, UK, again, in different levels, in different ways, they're using AI to make actual decisions on how to move forward. So that's one aspect of AI literacy. We also have capability, extremely important. We need to understand certain things such as using the right AI. We have ChatGPT, we have Google Bard, we have Bing, but then there's more to it. Those are great generative AIs, but if we want images, we want videos, there's different AIs to use that. Some of it is coming together. We have Wolfram Alpha if we want specific math information, but there's a lot more. There's many, many different AIs that are out there. We need to be aware of that because this is what our students, our employees are using different AIs. The next big one here in capability is understanding that there are limits to the AI, hallucinations, not having up-to-date information, not having full access to the internet. All these different things are important aspects for us to know overall with AI literacy. And finally, part of this with capability deals with prompt engineering. We have to understand how to ask the right question. I wish I had more time so we could go through a prompt engineering class right now, but it makes a huge world of difference in asking the right type of question. And we have to think this is the same way. If I'm having a conversation with somebody, if I'm not asking the right kind of question to them, they're going to give me an answer that isn't really helping me. So I have to understand that my students, my employees, they need to be trained in the right way to ask the appropriate question to get the best results. That's part of AI literacy. Knowledge. What do we mean here? With knowledge, it's about access and personal data. Who has access to this? Well, everyone has access. We like to say that because it's free, but not everyone has access to the internet, not everyone has access to computers, so we need to take that into account. But I also need to fully realize that, yes, my students have access, I have access, businesses have access, their competitors have access, my country has access, so do other countries. So we have to understand that this is being used, and if my competitor is using it, well, then I need to ensure that I can compete as well. But it also deals with how's my information being used? Is it safe? Are they reselling it? We need to understand that. We need to read the fine print because one AI might treat my information one way, another AI might treat it completely differently. Maybe I need to have a secure type of AI. Again, we need to understand these things. The next one here deals with understanding some of the terminology. What is an NLP? What is narrow AI? What is general AI? What is super AI? When we hear those terms thrown around, we need to understand them in order to be able to use the system better, in order to have advanced capabilities here with the AI. AI-created content. This is a big one. This is a very powerful aspect because it can be used in so many different ways. It can enhance education by creating all sorts of beautiful imagery, of helping us to do active learning in different ways. It can help with all sorts of different Hollywood special effects. Great, but there's also another way that it could be used, right? Scams, deep fakes. So we need to be aware of that. Everyone needs to understand how it could be used. Ever seen this image? So this is a nice example. This is kind of funny, kind of interesting. Oh yeah, puffy jacket. So that's nice. But of course, there's other ways that it could be used. It could start to influence political aspects. My views of some different people in power could be modified or changed because I see an image of them, right? So this could definitely be used to affect elections. And it will be used to affect elections. So we need to be aware of that. That's why everyone needs to develop these AI literacy skills, because it's about politics, it's also about affecting money. Right? This deep fake was used and it actually affected the US stock market. And finally, we have AI literacy dealing with critical thinking. One of, if not the most important aspect of AI literacy. We need to know that, hey, even if it's a perfect system, it still needs to be reviewed. It still needs to be verified. Yes, we have to hold the AI accountable for the information it's given, but also I'm the one accountable, because if I use AI and then turn in a report, turn in an assignment, turn in anything, I'm still the one that's used it as a tool, and now it's up to me to turn it in to verify it as well. Methods and data sources. I understand that the technology is super powerful, but we still can't accept the fact that it's just a black box and I don't know how it works, right? We need to get some understanding of how is this doing this and really have an awareness of how it's being used, as well as the data sources, what was used for that. Was it all legally obtained? All these different things that need to be taken into consideration, because this affects our overall solution for it. If it has bad data to begin with, it's going to be bad results. That ties in with the guardrails. So the guardrails, all different AIs, unless you might not be aware of this, all different AIs have different types of guardrails. That means that this protects us, right? Protects us in that it won't offend you if you ask it a certain question. It won't tell you how to hotwire a car. I've tried that many times just to figure out, well, you know, that's interesting. No, sorry, I can't tell you, that's illegal. Okay, but it does this with lots of different informations, which is, it's great. It stops you from maybe doing something wrong like building a bomb, but also now you don't have access to the information. They're making that decision for you. Okay, well, maybe I'm doing research. Maybe I want to know this information. Nope, the AI won't let you use that because of guardrails. So that's something to keep in mind. That ties in also with bias and ethics. If ChatGPT was built in Silicon Valley, in California, in the United States, there's going to be a bias towards that. It's just built in. In the same way, if there's an AI that's built in the UK, there's a bias towards the UK. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that that's a bias that we need to be aware of. That's part of our critical thinking. If there's an AI that's built in China, guess what? There's going to be a bias towards China. The next part here, ethics. This is extremely important. This can't be overlooked. Is it appropriate to use AI for every single situation? There's so much more. It's all just the tip of the iceberg and how it's being used. There's going to be so much more utilization in so many different ways. Here's an instance that just occurred. There's a meeting. Professors had to attend it. One professor put an AI in there. It's attending the meeting for me. Is that fair? Is that ethical? Those are questions. We have no policies for it, so that's something to think about. And finally, is this affecting the environment? Is this affecting the person physically? We need to consider all these things. We need to have debates. We need to have discussions. This is a major one that I'm starting to really push as well, this avoidance of over-reliance. AI is going to be so powerful and used in so many different ways, it's going to cause us to rely on it a lot, so we might lose some skills because we don't use it anymore as far as us, because we're letting the AI use it. And is that okay? Maybe. We have to make those decisions, though, but it needs to be purposeful. We need to be aware that, hey, we're going to be losing some skills. We might not even be able to gain new skills because we have the AI that's doing it for us. We just need to make that conscious decision. So those 4 different aspects of it. What about the value? What about the utilization? Well, the utilization is off the charts, right? We have millions of daily users. We have billions of users that are potential. Again, it's affecting the entire world. What about the value? Right now, it's valued at $137 billion. That's expected to grow by over 120% year over year. So again, it's massive. The next big part here is to understand that this is all from less than a year. In less than 7 days, less than a week, it will be the first birthday of ChatGPT. And it's just now starting to open its eyes with multimodal, right? So again, you can consider it a baby. A baby has caused all this. Next one, is it just me saying this? No, the EU is coming out and saying that this is an imperative. So has the UN, so has UNESCO. In fact, UNESCO has stated that for effective human-machine collaboration, take institutional actions to ensure AI literacy across all layers of society. That's coming from the UN. The World Economic Forum has stated, in this crucial moment, when AI is poised to transform every aspect of our personal and professional lives, universal AI literacy is imperative. The Department of Defense from the United States has said that this is a matter of national security. The Department of Education has specifically said that AI literacy is not only important to protect educators and students from possible dangers, but also valuable to support teachers to harness the good and do so in effective ways. Microsoft has said, hey, 82% of leaders say employees need this new skill to prepare for the growth. A recent survey by Resume Builder specifically stated that 92% of business leaders say that AI chatbot experience is a plus. That's right now that they're looking for on resumes. Not in the future, but right now they're looking for this. So we have to incorporate that in our instructions. So here's a call to action. 1, government organizations, guidelines, protections, without overregulation. We can't stifle growth. There's too much competition going on, but we do need protections. The next one here, hands-on training for faculty, trainers, students, and employees, upskilling. This needs to be occurring right now. Not some task force that we create that like, oh yeah, 6 months from now, we'll see what the task force comes up with. No, there needs to be training right now on AI literacy because it's so impactful right now. And the next one, policies, guidelines for processes and ethics. It took me 6 months of working with our administration at my university to get them to add half a sentence in our policy dealing with ethics and student capabilities to understand that, hey, yeah, you can't just use ChatGPT to do your essay for you because that's cheating, right? That took me 6 months. So yes, universities move at a snail's pace, but these policies need to be put in there so that we can refer to them so that students have clear guidance on what is allowed, what's not allowed. And then finally, AI literacy curriculum integration. This needs to be happening right now. It needs to be incorporated. These are fundamental skills that all students, all employees need to have. So this needs to be fully integrated. By doing this, by going through this, we can have enhanced capability by effectively and ethically working with the AI. Underscore of with the AI. Banning won't work. Might as well try to ban water. It's impossible. But working with the AI, thinking about it with this AI literacy, how can we use it effectively? How can we use it ethically? That's the key thing that we need to specifically work on. And I thank all of you for being part of the solution, for taking it upon yourselves to learn about AI, buying books, attending conferences like this, YouTube channels, all these different things to do your continuous learning in order to be effective and address the situation. Because the only way we can properly address this is as a community, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. Thank you very much.
Oh my goodness. Thank you very much, Brent. That was absolutely fantastic. I think if that's not a clear call to action for all of us, then I'm going to ban water. So thank you. Thank you for that metaphor too. We have the opportunity for one question for Brent before we move on. Is anyone burning to ask, to say something? Okay, can we have a mic here, please? Okay, can you stand? Could you say who you are, please, and state your question? Thank you.
Hi, my name is John DeBang. I work at the Open University. Fantastic talk. I really empathize with your pain with working with universities administrations and them not being the fastest.
Lots of us.
Yes. So I just wondered, moving on that, have you thought of any strategies for getting universities to move just a little bit quicker in this area?
Right.
We'd like that answer. Yes, please.
So you see how important it is. I have to stand up for this, right? Yeah. So yes, there's different aspects to this, and what I found that's really interesting is we have to use the community once again, because there's this weird phenomenon of I've been around the world. Like I've literally been hired to go to different universities and give workshops, webinars, all sorts of different things, written books. So I don't want to say I'm a big deal, but like, hey, I've done this. I go to my university and try to give a presentation, and I get, a handful of people show up. Right? I'm like, hey, don't you know who I am? Yeah, but the thing is that they know me. So it's like, oh yeah, it's that guy, right? So we need to use these other great people that we have within the network and bring those people in and then really build it up as, hey, this is vital, this is important. Along with that, there needs to be a grassroots aspect to it, in that there needs to be involvement. We need to bring in the instructors and talk about the pains that they're going through, and to understand that it's difficult for them. If they've been a subject matter expert in their field for 30 years teaching, I'm a perfect teacher, I don't need any new information, but yet, hey, it's not a matter of you choosing to do this. This is just the way the world is. Now what can we do to make it as easy as possible for you to do that? So it needs to be a conversation, it needs to be a community aspect, and we need to use our network for sure. That would be my answer. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Brent, for that great answer, and thanks for the great question too. So Layering and the scaling. So, Margaret, I think that might be in your area.
Amazing.
So, I'd really like to introduce Margaret Korosek to you from the University of Leeds in the UK. Over to you, Margaret. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and delighted to be with you here with this panel. I'm here from an institutional perspective. So we talked about the change. What does that look like? How do we do that? And so that is the perspective I'm bringing here. This will be a different conversation than the one we've just heard, but actually they dovetail together in a really meaningful way. Just a bit of a step back. I consider myself a nomad, born in a place I never lived, and lived in places I never stayed. Those experiences is a lens that I bring to this as well, where you're always figuring out the new environment that you're in. You're always figuring out what is needed and how to achieve change, how to adapt, how to change. One of the pivotal moments really in my career was 2009. I joined Western Governors University. So Western Governors University is currently about 140,000 fully online students. They have over 300,000 graduates. And why was that so important? That was an intentionally designed student experience. It was intentionally designed. There was no campus, and there still is no campus. But that intentional design and the ecosystem that enables that to happen absolutely stuck with me. There were 12,000 students when I started there. Obviously, the growth speaks for itself. But really what landed for me in that experience and in that environment is graduation. You only need to sit in the audience and watch those on stage. They are coming together for the very first time, meeting, shaking hands, breaking bread together. And it is so powerful. They've never met in person. They've never met the academic they worked with. They never met their tutor. They never met their fellow students. Yet the connection between them was absolutely palpable, electric. So human connection is in the mix here, and it is possible online without a doubt. So the call to action in this session is, do we need to shift the spotlight from educators to learners? Sure. But what does that mean? And in my experience, I've always worked in places where the learners were always first. The learners were always front and center. So, why is that different? Why do we need to focus on this shift, actually? But part of it is that, there's still a narrative. Accelerated degrees aren't necessarily valued. What is that? Is that vocational learning? Fully online in some cases. Maybe it's not so accepted in some countries even. But I have hope. I have hope, and I've seen the power of this designed system that really can have an impact. So I see the ecosystem of design as looking at it from a systemic view, the systems view. If we talk about wanting to do a degree and we want to maybe add other courses, there's enterprise architecture underneath all of that needs to happen. There's ways of working. There's the academic experience. There's the professional services experience. And in online learning, we know, I think for the most part, that there's a partnership. You draw on specialist skills. You draw on a learning designer. You draw on a developer to bring that to life, to bring it to the students, to make it work for a fully online student. Campus is different. You don't necessarily design your program. Institutions are moving in this direction, but oftentimes it's the academic on their own, in the classroom, doing their program, teaching their course, which is great. That works, and it has worked for a long time. But what are we missing in that? I think we're missing a lot, actually. That synergy of learning, of program design, of what is possible in media, of what support is needed to embed and integrate new technology, AI. What does that mean? If you leave everyone individually to figure it out, well, you know you're going to get a hodgepodge of all sorts of different things. So how do we look at that more systemically? Just from the perspective of the University of Leeds now, University of Leeds is Russell Group University, research-intense university. There are 40,000 campus students, 8,000 members of staff, and a small but growing online, fully online degree portfolio, which is what I'm leading on. They have a very comprehensive digital transformation strategy. So wide-ranging from ways of working, the infrastructure, really comprehensive digital transformation strategy, of which one part is student education. One of the biggest ambitions there is curriculum redefined. That is looking at the entire portfolio and intentionally redesigning and redefining every single program. Well, that takes a village, and it takes a lot of effort, right? We know that. But there's, as I said, a small group of a small portfolio of fully online degrees. We have 100 MOOCs available. We've got the growing portfolio. But I see this discrepancy between this intensity of designing our fully online programs as compared to what we're doing on campus. And I think, ooh, you know, we talk about the digital student experience. Well, what does that mean? The focus was on campus students. So what are we going to give them? How are we going to give them their campus navigation? How are we going to show them what's happening on campus? And I said, well, what about if we get it right for our online students? We're going to get it right for all students, actually. Getting the right information in the right time, I think that's where, where AI can really have a huge impact, and we're definitely not leveraging it enough. Knowing who the student is. Who are you? And what is it that you need right now? There's a huge value in that. But I see this as the distraction, right? We talk about the online learners over here, and we talk the hybrid learners over there, and we talk the blended learners somewhere else out there. That's a distraction. It's a complete distraction. Let's just get it right for the right learner at the right time in the right way that they need to learn for their purposes. These labels, essentially, I find it truly a distraction. But if we take this designed approach, what does that look like? And offering this holistic, connected human experience both for staff and for students. It's not either or. We need to support staff, but we also need to look at that student experience. So just as an example, let's talk about curriculum design. So in its most simple form, obviously, you've got the modules, you've got the courses. We use different language here. I'm using now a UK-based language, so a module might be, the different parts and courses that make up a degree. So you might work on this independently. you might have a partnership. It quickly becomes complex because, why? We're trying to shift the spotlight from educators to learners, so let's add in some micro-credentials to this. What does that look like? What does that mean for the design of that module? What does that mean for the way we create that learning experience, for the resources we choose, for the way we assess? Are we embedding formative assessment? Are we doing assessment for learning? Well, depends, I don't know. Is it credit-bearing, non-credit bearing? That's a lot of considerations, a lot to consider. Yet, most institutions, well, let me just say in the UK, are trying to diversify their portfolio, right? They're diversifying their portfolio. What does it mean? Well, I'll add some short courses in there too, and probably a couple MOOCs. So we've got academics needing to design these courses. Yeah, let's not forget, they're all framed by the research. They're doing the research, they're designing the courses, they're doing it all, right? Well, they can't. How do we create this infrastructure and support network or ecosystem of design that acknowledges this, that acknowledges the challenges this creates? So I see an ecosystem of design as supporting the equity of students and staff in this environment and contributes to the viability of the courses on offer. From a systems thinking perspective again, we know that the vitality and health of one area directly impacts the vitality and health of another. If they're out of balance, the equilibrium will break, and things break, experiences fall. And we can't do that. We owe it to our students to give them the best experience, but we also owe it to our staff to mobilize and to help them. So one of the approaches at the University of Leeds is this learning design agency, and it's not an agency, it's agency as in I've got choice. So there's a bit of this ecosystem of design that comes in different forms. It's like a triage point. Program team coming to you saying, this is my program, these are the special needs I have. I need a virtual lab, I need a campus lab, I have all of these requirements. But we have different perspectives. So an academic development consultant might have a really deep conversation with them. You know, what are you trying to achieve with this program? You'll have a learning designer going in, doing the details. You've got a media team. This support network is really important. And guess what? It's not just for the online space. We're trying to make that an equitable scenario. One of the ways as well is Helix. That connection and that human connection is key. A space to convene, a space to experiment, and guess what also? A space to be vulnerable, to not know the outcome, to explore. You know, there's this certainty in education and this certainty in research, and it's all evidence and it's strong and it's clear. But sometimes we need to step into this unknown space that can be really challenging. But providing a space, we have found since opening this in September, that is hopping. It's a place to come together. We're having design workshops there. We're having our staff and students. We're having industry coming into that space. And it's leveraging the art of the possible. It's leveraging what is possible in AI, in virtual reality. But it's that conversation about what do you need for your students, and then how can we achieve that? How can we design it in a sustainable and accessible way. One of the really exciting things that emerged recently is we've launched an MSc Masters in Disability Studies, Rights, and Inclusion. Now, you think, great, it's a niche program. Let's do it anyway. It has fundamentally changed the way we approach all programs. Curriculum redefined, all programs, because we have had to get accessibility right. We have had to get the look and feel of that fully online course right. It has pushed the boundaries. But that's where the transferable skills come in. That's where the transferable learning comes through. And that is exciting, so exciting. And that's what we're seeing. So as we shift the spotlight, I suggest, to human connections. It is this connection with others. It's the conversation. Honestly, it's probably the reason why you're here at OEB, right? It's those conversations that happen that you take away something. You take away something that you've learned, you take away that experiencing, and realizing you don't have to do it alone. We can learn from others, and we can learn what works for us, take it and apply it to our own. So valuing those different skill sets. So I love this quote. Grace Hopper is a computer pioneer. She was a naval officer. I think she retired in her 80s. And she was known for her trailblazing contribution to programming languages, software development, and actually started the foundation for COBOL later, which became COBOL. But a ship in port is safe, but that's not what ships are built for. And so I think, oh, well, what is higher education built for? Like, what is it really for? And we're all trying to pivot, we're diversifying, but we're doing it in a very safe way, I think. How can we just go out and do this ambition and the ambitious strategies that we all have without that network of support, without intentionally creating those experiences that we want for our students and our staff? So I leave you with this, that you can take away what works for you today, but I ask that you have those conversations. Create scenarios where you come together with people you wouldn't have otherwise come together with within your organization. Have that conversation. What do you think about this program? What do you think about this? That designed approach, that intentional outlook of what the student will experience is so powerful. And it goes across whatever type of learning or course that you're offering. It is incredibly powerful, and I don't want anyone to be marginalized by not having that support or not having those conversations. So that is what I leave with you today, and please reach out. There's so much to explore. This is only the beginning, as we know, in a way. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, that was a real call to action, Margaret. Thank you so much. Love to be able to do what we do at that sort of scale. So thank you for sharing that really with us. We have a chance for one question for Margaret. If anyone has one, wave hard at me. I can't see too well. Okay.
Bravo. Thank you.
Save it for the panel then. Okay. So, one more speaker for you. Different take again, I believe. She's going to look backwards and forwards. Can I introduce you to Professor Sian Bain? She is in the University of Edinburgh in Scotland, and she's director of the Centre for Research into Digital Education. So, over to you, Sian.
Thank you, Gilly, and thanks OEB for having me here today. It's a real delight to be back in Berlin. Yeah, my name's Sian Bain. So I've been at the University of Edinburgh for probably about 15 years, over which time my first job was to set up a new master's program in digital education, which I did, and then moved on to create the Centre for Research in Digital Education. Now I'm working as director and co-director of education for the Edinburgh Futures Institute, which is a big new strategic investment that University of Edinburgh is making in interdisciplinary and data-driven education and research. I'm saying those things mostly as a kind of introduction to the kind of shape of the talk that I want to give today, which is really about taking a sort of historical perspective on some of the changes that we're looking at the moment in digital education, sort of playing off this idea of the big reset that we've been set as our kind of task for this morning. So these are my social medias. Please get in touch if you want to afterwards. Email, Twitter, Blue Sky, and then that's the website of my research centre. So we use the hare as a kind of motif for the research centre that I run, and that's partly because the hare is it's a bit of a trickster, very fast moving, often mistaken for a rabbit, but is actually much more edgy than a rabbit. And I think there's something in there about the way that represents what we think about when we talk about digital education. But what I want to focus on this morning is this idea of futures, because I think the sort of overarching theme of OEB is the futures we choose, which I think is a fantastic theme, because I think it's a very contemporary debate and one we need to be having more. There's this sense, and this is over my sort of 15-year career history so far, that often there's this sense that as educators and as students as well, we often have a sense that the futures are chosen for us. They're either driven by technological change, or they're driven by policy imperatives at the institutional or national or supranational level. And sometimes there is, other speakers have been talking about the sense of agency. And I think there is a big task to do, particularly in higher education, but also in other sectors, to give educators and students a sense that they have agency and a say over what this future should look like, what our preferable, desirable futures might be. And the other thing that I want to really talk about, and this is around the sort of historical perspective that I want to give on digital education generally, is that we have these cyclical narratives of transformation, disruption, automation, which have been going back for decades, at least, definitely since the beginning of my career, but way before that. So we're constantly in this cycle of everything's broken, how do we fix it? This thing is coming around the horizon, how do we adapt to it? And often we neglect that kind of piece of work we need to do collectively to understand not just how we're driven by technological change, but how we want to imagine and build the future of education. So one quote that I come back to quite a bit in my research, particularly when I'm writing about automation and now artificial intelligence, is this kind of historical kind of grounding that we have in the work going back to the 60s. So I'm sure people in this room will be familiar with Patrick Supas's work, one of the, I suppose you might say, founding fathers of thinking around digital education. Back in 1966, he published this groundbreaking paper saying that about AI and about automation, and saying that we can, in a few more years, have personalized, individual, fabulous tutors for everybody. Everybody's got this, could potentially have an Aristotle on their shoulder. We're having those conversations again now in the context of some of the more positive ways in which we're talking about generative AI and AI generally. These conversations come back around. In 2013, I'm sure many colleagues in the room will remember that this was kind of at the peak of massive open online courses and the kinds of conversations that were going on then about how massification of open and online content was going to radically disrupt, if not eliminate, universities as we currently understand them. There were many reports like an avalanche is coming. This was one of the most well-known ones, at least in the UK, which kind of used this narrative of higher education as it currently exists is broken. It's going to be, technological change is going to massively disrupt that sector. Come on, universities, think about how you're going to adapt. And universities do adapt, they adapt all the time. But again, this is an example of another very, very consistent narrative that we see in education, that current educational institutions are broken and we need to sort of fix them, often through technology. I was saying to my colleagues at the beginning of this session, the last time I was in Berlin was for this conference, I think it was 2007. I was sort of towards the beginning of my career, and it's when Second Life was huge, and everybody was talking about Second Life and how virtual environments and virtual worlds were going to change the way that education operates. And it was really fun. This is an example of one of the teaching spaces we were using back in 2007. But now we're having that conversation again. It's never really gone away. Now we've got people talking about the metaverse and how that's got the potential to transform education. It's happening right now, says Nick Clegg, but I mean, maybe it is. It was happening possibly even more back in 2007. So we have these kind of recurrent narratives, and I think really for the rest of what I want to say this morning, it's really about thinking about how do we move out of this sort of cycle, or how do we change the way that these conversations occur within these cycles of disruption and transformation and reset. And I think that as we kind of look to do that, for me as a researcher, it's less about what's the tech going to do or how an institution's going to adapt to the tech. It's actually about thinking, what is education for? What is our sort of deep understanding of what we think we're doing when we educate? And how does technological change shift that? And that isn't a conversation that we have very much, but I think particularly we're seeing now with artificial intelligence and generative AI particularly, there are some fundamental shifts taking place in regard to what it means to be an educated human. So I'll say a little bit more about that. But I think the second big question, and it's one that I think is being addressed through this conference and in many other forums as well, is how, as educators, we get better at telling the stories about the futures that we want. Because at the moment, the people that are really good at telling stories about the future are the big tech firms, very good at not only imagining radically different futures, but also very good at creating desire for them. And I think what we're less good at, particularly maybe in universities and I think schools as well, is actually saying, this is the future we want. This is the future that we want everybody to desire for education. So I'll say a little bit more about that as well. But this first question, what does it mean to be human? How is technology changing what it means to be an educated human? Again, sort of looping, I'm going sort of back and forth a bit today, but going back to 1994, we're coming kind of through a period where postmodernist and post-structuralist thought was shaping a lot of educational research at the time. And this quote from Usher and Edwards is one that I've always liked because it summarizes the conventional idea, the humanist basis of the educational project. Right? So they say that education as a process has been founded on a humanist idea or even ideal of a certain kind of subject who has the potential to become self-directing. The role of education is to bring out and nurture that agency of individuals. So the task of education is to bring out potential. That has been true for centuries and will continue to be true in many ways, but I think that what we're seeing now in this new educational landscape is something quite different. It's one where we're seeing a much deeper entanglement of the machinic and the human. So when you work with ChatGPT or with student essays that are using artificial intelligence in various ways, it is increasingly difficult to separate humans from other objects and sources of knowledge. And I think that is a radical transformation and something that we need to be thinking about as educators. It's about having a reset of what we understand education to be in some senses. The second kind of issue is around the stories that we tell, and how do we tell better stories about the futures we want when we are facing some particularly challenging contexts. I think part of this is about, within educational research, there's been a big sort of futures turn, or a big turn to speculation as a set of methods and a mode of thinking about what education needs to become, not just to address challenges like technological change, but also in the face of climate change, political instability, all the other major kind of global challenges that we're facing. And I think what's heartening to me is that we've seen conferences like this one taking on this challenge of designing the future, but we're also seeing many other kinds of institutions doing the same thing. We've got universities. These are just some ones from the UK. We've got Oxford Centre for Digital Education and Futures Institute. We've got the Futures Institute at Edinburgh. There's an Educational Futures Network at the University of Bristol. There are loads of these. This is just a few. We've got national and supranational bodies like UNESCO and OECD, and the Digital Futures Commission reflecting on the nature of digital society and how we want that to develop. So the key thing here is, what do we want this future to be, not how is technology going to drive us in a particular direction. And then we also have this upsurge of really interesting research coming through on higher education futures, speculative futures, alternative futures. So we've got some very diverse kind of stories about what this future might look like, circulating through education, through policy, through practice. And I think this means it's a really exciting moment to be having this conversation, and it's such an important one. We also have more institutions doing something we did at Edinburgh, which are institution-wide futuring projects. So at Edinburgh, it was just pre-COVID, so it was between 2017 and 19, we ran a big project called Near Future Teaching, which worked with 400, 500 students and staff from across the university to co-design. Again, it was this design-based approach that Margaret's been talking about, to co-design a future for digital higher education. I don't have time to go into a lot of detail about this at the moment. Very happy to follow up with anyone who's interested. But we did, as a result of that, come out with a very strong values-based kind of perspective on what we wanted our digital future to be. And I think I'm seeing much more of this work happening now in other institutions. And I think it's a really positive trajectory for us. So I'm coming to the end of what I want to say this morning. But I think this is probably one of the key messages. It comes from the really important 2021 UNESCO report on the future of education, this idea that no trend is destiny and that multiple alternative futures are possible. And I think we're seeing at the moment the current trend that everyone is talking about is generative AI. And we do have to have the conversations about generative AI and AI more generally. But again, it's about how do we not see this as a kind of a predetermined kind of trajectory which will definitely take education in a particular direction, but rather how do we, as educators, education developers, as students, create multiple alternative futures which can shape the way that Gen AI and other technologies will develop. So that's the end of my talk. Again, my contact details, and thank you very much for listening.
So, did you get that message from Sean? No trend is destiny. So it's over to you super educated humans here in the audience to make those choices. Was that what you said, Sean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of.
That's what I heard. Okay. We've got time for a question for Sean before we move to questions to the panel. Anyone want to ask one? Can we have one here, please? Can you say who you are, please? Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eboy, the Hague University of Applied Science. So the thing we know about change is that it's going faster and faster and faster and faster. The thing that I know about research is usually looking back. So should we develop research more into sort of predictive research and then conclude what the future will look like?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think a big part of futures studies is always and probably will always be about prediction. But I think what I'm seeing now in education research is a different kind of perspective on futures, which is about kind of keeping the future open, like rather than trying to predict a future which is happening or is likely to happen. It's about keeping that future open and working together to shape what we want that future to look like. So it's more, I think, where predictive kind of methodologies are used, it's often quite different from the kind of collaborative, more humanities and design-led methodologies that we're seeing in some of the other conversations that are happening at the moment around speculative futures, future scenarios, and this kind of idea that the future is open, it's multiple, it's possible. We all need to be telling our stories about what we want it to be like.
Okay. Anyone else for Sean? No, we'll bring you. We'll bring you on.
I shall.
Come in. Thank you. It's working.
I think it is now. So I'm struggling slightly with the concept that this generative AI is similar in trends to the other examples that you gave because of how entangled it is within, and its potential entanglement within our system and how students are using it and how researchers are using it from end to end. And so I guess I kind of want maybe some more ideas of why you think this could be potentially just a trend.
Right, I think that was for you, Sean.
Is that for me? Should I just answer that one? I don't think it's just a trend. I mean, I think it is quite a profound change, as I said, and it does raise some really fundamental issues around kind of basically what it means to be human and what it means to work with machines. So I don't think it's just a trend, but I do see it as part of a trajectory, because education has been becoming sort of datafied, if you like, over the last kind of 10, 15, 20 years and more. We're all very dependent on big datafied enterprise systems. We've been talking about learning analytics for over a decade now, and generative AI is part of that trajectory. So it hasn't sort of come from nowhere. It has a history, and that's kind of what I mean by why it's important to look at the historical trajectories of these things as well, rather than to just see them as kind of mapping a fixed future for us or forcing an imperative for change on us. I hope that makes sense.
Does that make sense to you? Okay.
Thank you.
Brent, do you want to comment on that question?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay,
Do you want
yeah,
to?
sure.
If you wish.
So yes, it is a matter of, it's definitely not a trend, right? I've heard some people talk about it in that way, like, oh, we've had certain other technological things to come up. But Gittner, hopefully you know what Gittner is. It's a big sort of company that does consultation for multiple businesses trying to understand the future. And what they've come out and said about generative AI is that it is not only going to be transformative, but within 5 years, it'll be utterly revolutionary with the capabilities of what it's going to be, with the full integration, that it's going to start to really make us start to question aspects of what it is that really separates us from technology. Because technology will be rapidly approaching capabilities and even personifications of humanity. In the same way, because of our constant and excessive utilization of technology, we're going to be approaching this way. So you can see the two are coming closer and closer together. So that's something really interesting to really think about, the entanglement, like what you were saying. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to open questions to anyone or all of the panel now. So if there's anything you'd like to explore, just sort of wave hard at me and we'll get a mic to you. There's one here.
Over here.
Can you keep your hand up? Thank you. Anyone else want to follow after this one, and we'll get the mic ready, and one at the
One on the
front
left.
for after that. Please go ahead. Can you just say who you are, please?
Yes, of course. My name is Evan Frendo. I'm based here in Berlin, and I work in language learning. My question, I think, is really for Brent, but maybe everybody can comment, and that is, Brent made the point that we need to be training the faculty, training the trainers, teaching them. Who's going to be doing that, or how are we going to train the trainers? At the moment, the world seems to be full of self-proclaimed experts who know everything about this game, and they're not. I mean, we've seen that even in this conference when we walk around the stands and things. So how do you see this happening?
Yeah,
Yay. Okay.
that is good.
I'll go to Brent, and then I will ask the others
Yeah.
for some comments,
So,
please.
yeah, you bring up a great aspect. Who's actually doing that? And it's important to really think about it, because that's sort of one of the worries that I had with my book, because I wanted to write about this to help instructors, but then I kept worrying about that as far as, well, isn't everything going to change? I mean, you have ChatGPT, which was sort of the originator, but then now you have GPT-4, and they're talking about GPT-5 and its capabilities and all these different things. So those things will always, the technology, the capabilities will always increase. But there is still foundational aspects that we have to learn. We have to make sure that everyone is aware of, and it's one of those things where if you don't use it, you lose it, because you'll quickly forget about these things, especially aspects of critical thinking, and I know that that's an abstract term, but still being able to question these things, being able to think about, oh, over-reliance, yes, that's a real thing. Oh, I need to think about the ethical aspects of this. Those are foundational things that us come up with, right? That we have this discussion about, that we really think about and debate. I mean, that's the one thing I do, is I try and seek out instructors that will always challenge me, that will always say things like, oh, I think this is a fad. Okay, is it a fad? Let's sit down and think about this. Is this really something that students need to know? Well, let's talk to industry. So that's why this is beautiful that we have this conference here, where it's merging both the academics and industry together to really look at what is real and what is not. So you bring up a great point. Yeah.
Margaret, do you want to try it?
Yeah, I think right now we're all being called to kind of explore this individually, right? If we don't, then we don't really know what the room is talking about. So there's about, you have to kind of unpick it individually. But what we're going to see on an institutional level is suddenly you're going to have this embedded within our systems, embedded within our virtual learning environment. It will surface in ways that you can't avoid it, actually, where you can either institutionally turn things off and turn it on, like we saw with Turnitin recently, last year, where there's a call to action where actually we're not ready for something. But that will, I think the pendulum will shift, where actually, yes, especially when it's let's integrate pictures, let's integrate, other things. How do you describe this course, things like this? There's so much that will become part of day to day within institutional systems that will, I think, become, a different topic. I mean, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Do you want to try it, Sean?
Yeah, so the question was who's going to do the training, and I think it's a really good one. I think universities, schools, governments need to invest. I mean, it's about putting more money into the sector to kind of provide and appoint people that can do this work, because I think it's a really important question, because I'm not sure those people, that we have enough of those people right now. I mean, at Edinburgh we have amazing researchers in artificial intelligence, but obviously they're not the ones that are going to be training people how to adapt and use it within teaching contexts. So I do think we need academic development units, educational development units, to be kind of bringing in more capacity to do this work. Otherwise, it just won't happen.
Okay, so, I mean, that's what we need to influence. I will come to you in a minute. I'll just add one little thought of my own there from my own work in transformation over the years, is that I don't necessarily wait for the policy or the trainers. If you think of it more as development work and going from action to policy, a great deal can happen with small-scale teams and academics trying things out, telling the students that's what they're doing. We don't necessarily understand all of this, but let's try something else that's relevant to your course. And you can learn an awful lot from small amounts and then scale it up throughout the institution or collaborate. So I'd say be a little bold about this. Don't wait to be trained because, as you say, you know, we're all in this together, really. No, there's no one expert here for sure. But if you get together in a small group, I think you're going to learn a lot in quite a short time, would be my suggestion. Over to you.
Hi, I'm Gila Kurtz. I kind of want to follow the previous topic we just started. First of all, thank you for enlightening presentation. As I see, we are talking about educational landscape, but we are not isolated. Kind of, there are other landscapes, and I would love to, maybe you can elaborate about the intercorrelation or what are the impacts of other landscapes on the AI within the educational landscape. Thank you.
Margaret, do you want to try that
Sure.
first?
Yeah. I mean,
Can you
I see it with, you know, with industry partnerships. I see it with the conversation of bringing in industry into the educational setting, because that's also the direction of travel when we look at about that diversification of the courses that we offer. You know, much of it is skills-based. What does the industry need? Where are those learners going? So if we don't have that partnership, if we don't have that conversation, we're missing a trick as an educational entity, and we'll lose it. We won't design and serve the audience that needs something, and that won't be, you know, sufficient for the employer or for that industry sector. So actually bringing in, and that's what I was mentioning, this helix space is, you know, bring in industry to have those conversations, bring it in, what do they need? Actually, let's design it so that it matches and meets their needs as well. So that's, yeah, definitely that collaboration goes back to the collaboration.
Okay.
Yeah, and I got to stand up for this too. So I actually thought about this a little bit yesterday as I was walking through, because I made a comment at some other presentation that I got brought in, again, so I have a YouTube channel, right? I'm not plugging it, this is part of my expression here. So I have a YouTube channel, and I've been on many different webinars with Brian Alexander. He's a Future Trends thing, maybe you've heard of him. And so because of that, that got me exposure, so I had lots of different organizations contact me to give them presentations about this. And what I found is that, okay, this works out great. A lot of universities want to know this. Awesome, I'm in my field. But then I got contacted by a conference dealing with journalism. Then I got contacted by like a business organization. And then I'm like, whoa, that's not my field at all. I'm an academic. And yet what I found is that we're not in this world where we need this professor because he's the subject matter expert, she's the subject matter expert in her field, she has all the information. No, the information doesn't exist just with that person. The information is online, right? That's the information age that we've been a part of for 30 years already. So I was able to look about business. I was able to find out information about journalism. And then when I gave my presentation, I still gave the foundational aspects of AI literacy, but now applied to their field. So as long as we have that, that correlates with so many different landscapes that they need to know that and then build upon that with specifics to that field. So they got a lot out of that. They really enjoyed it because it made them ask questions about what it is that they're doing in their own processes. So I think to really address that, as well as the previous question, it's just a matter of understanding these foundational aspects that we all have to be aware of, and then building upon that by asking ourselves questions, having this community engagement, community of inquiry, again, to build upon that. So I think that's really important, and there's so much overlay with that, yeah.
I think that's a wonderful answer, Brent, thank you. I mean, you're talking really about the power of context and the need for collaboration to surface that, but around a spark, you know, that's actually getting that conversation going. You're the spark at the moment. Did you want to say what you're doing in this area? Can we have the
microphone.
Mic back here, please? Thank you. I think you might have a bit of a view on this.
Thank you, Julie. Yeah, I'm a Dean of Instructional Technologies faculty in Israel. and we are really exploring the use of AI within our curriculum. And actually, we did this program of redesign the curriculum by the students. And it was amazing to learn from them. And this is one takeaway that I suggest for anyone. It's not that we have the knowledge. The students, they have the knowledge. So let's learn from them. And this is what our takeaway from our institution. Thank you, Jilly.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Right, over to you. Thank you. Can you say who you are, please?
Yeah, hello. Willem Abrook here. I'm the head of education for LearnCube. So I'm thinking that now we're in like the last gasp of the pre-AI phase, where everything is futurism and predicting and raising red flags. But like after the revolution, then we're in a different context of ubiquity and all-pervasiveness. Brent, a question for you is, could you see your field shifting from AI literacy to human advocacy? And then Margaret and Sean, could you maybe comment on the planning and structural implications of such a field?
Okay, did you get that?
I got to stand up again. So, yeah, so, oh man, dealing with the future aspects, right? The more that I read, the more that I'm like, yeah, when is this ever going to slow down? But it's not. So this idea is that now we need to look at months as if they're years, because the rate of increase is just unbelievable. And we're just now, like I explained before, the baby of ChatGPT, the baby of AI is just now opening its eyes dealing with multimodal, because now that's being released. Now we have vision, now we have other senses, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Once we get AI put inside common robotics, that's going to open up a whole other world. So that's one whole aspect, but I'm not even going to go there. I'm going to go back to your other aspect, dealing with the humanism aspect, because that's a whole new field that I'm starting to do research in as well. Right now, we have people that are starting to marry AIs in certain countries. That's happening. In Japan, where there's issues with social isolation, they're marrying their AI. We might think, well, that's a little bit crazy. What are you talking about? I have this AI that's very knowledgeable, that I can tell it to have a conversation with me. It makes it so that I'm not lonely, have a lot in common. Again, so we have to really think about this. So that's one aspect of it. But now let's take that out of certain countries and take it to our own countries, where we have aging population, where we have many families that are moving away from each other in order to get jobs. So now we have social isolation there. So of course an AI could fill that gap. We have different AIs that are going to and already are being used for assistance with mental health, for assistance with cognitive decline. So there's going to be so much integration and utilization of AI, that AI is going to become more and more human. That's something for us to really think about. Those relationships are going to be something that we really need to start focusing on, which is beyond the AI literacy like you're talking about, but it's a matter still of the different components of them. The awareness that this is happening, the effect on society, and the critical thinking of, is this what we want? Do we want to have policies for this? Do we want to have regulations? How do we want this to develop? Again, there's so much to this. Great question.
Margaret, do you want to?
Yeah, so as far as the planning, I think your second part of the question was more about planning in this space. And I think, you know, as an education, as the educational landscape and as an institution, we're going to start seeing what is the impact, what is it that students come to us for, what do they stop coming to us for because it's something we're not offering. So like where are we going to feel that actually as an institution when our core purpose is to bring students in, but actually the students are going elsewhere because they can find something that someone's already adapted, progressed further, you know, been more proficient at. I think there is an institutional challenge in a way with this to keep current and relevant and, you know, not have this, this lag, but that takes time. Institutions don't shift quickly at all, and it's really challenging. And so, you know, leaders will emerge, institutional leaders will emerge, where you start seeing, where the direction of travel is going, and then people follow. You get some momentum. But I think as institutions, we're going to start feeling that probably. Yeah.
Okay. Did you want to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the question about planning, I mean, I think certainly for universities, maybe it's less about planning than about opening up big speculative possibilities for what this future might look like, because I think you're absolutely right. The human dimension is the kind of one that we're not talking about very much at the moment, but, what if we do end up in, 20, 30, 50 years from now in a society where, semi-skilled jobs, many very skilled jobs have been automated, where AI is kind of running stuff. Humans are kind of wondering what we're for. Maybe we're going to university to do different things. There's a much more focus on the creative humanities, philosophy-oriented disciplines. And in that case, universities will have to undergo quite significant radical change in terms of their mission and the kind of what they might do. So for me, the question is, yes, we have to plan, but we also have to speculate and look really far into the future to sort of think about where we're headed.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to ask the panel one more question each just before we head towards coffee. And just hang on another few minutes, everyone. And I just supposing we met in 5 years, all right? 5 years' time, 28, end of 28. We all sat here and everybody else turned up again. And what do you think would be distinguishing us as human educators then? What is it going to be that we're doing in 5 years' time that makes us specially human?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Because there is going to be this movement. Like I said, there's going to be this we're rapidly headed towards each other. Who here doesn't have a computer with them, right? This whole idea of becoming a cyborg. The new big thing that for sure will happen within the next year, within the next few months, is there's going to be a huge development dealing with wearables, wearable AI. That means that you'll either have a pendant or you'll have glasses that'll have it built in, different applications that, hey, it's always with you, always on. That's going to be the next thing. And then it's even going to be where the AI will perfectly function for you even without internet. Yeah, imagine that. So now it's going to become where it's a part of you, and God forbid something happens where it doesn't work, then it's going to be all over the place as far as like, I can't function, I can't do my job, I can't access everything. Currently, I don't know a single phone number. I don't know that. I don't know my own phone number. Why? Because I trust my digital device. So in the same way, we're going to be pushing over so much more to the AI. So it's really going to be this understanding of relationships and moving forward. So I think we're going to be having some great OEB conferences where we start to have these discussions about what that actually means. Your question is going to, I think, guide the future of what we really talk about dealing with AI.
Margaret.
Yes. So it's OEB 34th year.
Yeah,
in 5 years.
Year.
And I see radical collaboration as being reality. In that 5 years, we're going to have to depend on each other. We're going to have those conversations with each other. And cross-institutional collaboration, industry, educational collaboration, that radical collaboration over and beyond what we currently do. And it's already happening, it's already starting, but I see that as being mainstream. It's no longer isolated institutions, isolated entities. It's a much more probably entangled network, but with that intentional kind of conversation about how do we collaborate in a new way? How can I learn from you? How can you learn from me? And how can we actually together achieve more?
I really like that one. Thank you. Sean?
I think 5 years from now, climate crisis will be intensifying even more than it currently is, and it will be harder to justify traveling. Well, I think both for conferences like this one and for universities generally, we'll have to have much more of a focus on different kinds of mobilities and enabling people not to travel yet still to be part of important kind of communities like this one. So I imagine 5 years from now, OEB will be streaming sessions.
Okay, okay.
I love it.
So, just... So, two things from me. Those of you who are still here at 4:15 this afternoon, we have a chance for you to, in a relaxed environment and playful environment, work out some of your possible futures. It'll be next door here in Potsdam 3, it's called, the next room here, where myself and quite a few colleagues from the conference are collaborating to help you play and start to work out some detailed futures. So anyone who's not back on their train or plane by then, please come along and have fun with us. And before you go off to your coffee, I'd like you just to go back to that person you spoke to earlier, who was supposed to be someone you didn't know at that time, and just tell them one thing, one insight from the fantastic panel that we had here. So please do that before you go. Thanks for your attention. Thank you very much.